It's not about saying, hey, we offer 15 services, so now we have the biggest net of customers that we can pull in. It's more so of like, hey, what's exactly that you offer? How do you find the exact customers that meet that criteria? And it makes things so much easier.
It's like the best thing you could do.
And welcome back to a new podcast episode. We have here again Caesar from Symphony Advertising, where we're gonna have another, as I call it, business talk episode where we just talk about business. Caesar, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
So in today's episode, we're gonna talk about why businesses fail, and we're not gonna come from a perspective that we have the answer to why the businesses fail, but more so a much higher level, broader look into just because you have money doesn't necessarily mean, actually, not necessarily, it doesn't mean to any degree that you'll be successful. Show you instances of companies that have raised tens, 50s, $100 million and still fail. And kind of shine the light on detailers of like, look, if you think you're starting with less money and you think that more money is the answer to you being more successful, that it's not. And that even if you have all the resources to, let's say, hire an agency, hire great talent, that doesn't mean you'll be successful. So if you feel underwhelmed, or like, oh, well, I'm just, I'm barely starting and this and this, that, let this episode kind of just shine a light of like, oh, so a lot of companies fail. It's like a thing that happens. And even when you have all the resources and money, other companies, much larger, much bigger, with a lot more talent, still go belly up. So first thing that we want to talk about here is actually this company that I found out about from Carlos Serrano's, Mr. Serrano Sauce, where he said that this one company, Zippity, was going out of business. And Zippity is like, it's a CRM for service businesses. So I'm assuming if you're like, here the exact description on Crunchbase is transforming field service software from back office CRM to on-demand booking platform. So basically, if you have lawn care, detailing, plumbing, HVAC, you can run your business off of this. That's what they kind of marketed it as. Now on Crunchbase, it gives you a general funding amounts of how much they raise. So on here, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but at least it gives you a ballpark pricing number. They raised $11.8 million in funding. So that's how much they went to investors and were able to raise that amount of money to grow Zippity. Now I know for Jobber, I think like a year ago, they raised, like, that's the, no shameless plug or anything, but that's the software that we use in our business. And they raised $60 million last year in funding to continue to grow their operation. So a lot of companies, tech startups, go out and get funded. That's what they do. They go out and raise 10, 50, 20, 50. Uber is at $1 billion, Airbnb is at $1 billion, Facebook hit $1 billion. They all raise an insurmountable amount of money to grow their business. So real quick, I'll go straight into it. So if you go to the Zippity website, it says Zippity's journey has come to an end. Thank you for all our customers, partners, and supporters. Now this is a company that raised let's just call it $11 million. So off the cuff, Caesar, let's just, as we normally do, you see them go out of business, like what goes through your head of like, that's interesting. What happened?
So with that, I mean, I know nothing about them, right? So they're a CRM for people in the field. I would assume just something went wrong. I would assume they weren't able to get enough customers. I would assume their platform didn't compete strongly enough with what's already out in the market, such as Jobber, right? I think that's a direct competitor.
They would be competing. Yes.
And honestly, too, like, well, of course, like, it depends who was running the show. Like, what do they know? How good are they? How skilled are they? But like, I would think personally, that's like, if somebody gave me $1 million to say grow your business, like, it's almost like you're fueling a fire you shouldn't fuel yet. If it was me, in my example, like if I had a couple of branches and I was told to build a campfire, I would feel comfortable with like a little bit of gasoline so I can grow it appropriately. But these companies, it would sound like they give me a freaking whole water hose of gas and all my branches are everywhere. So I'm just going to catch the whole building on fire.
Yeah.
So I don't know their specifics, but that sounds it's a different ratio. Like that's 11 million. That's
Yeah, 11 million. Yeah, yeah. So
And
typically,
then how
like,
many employees? You know, it's like probably
Yeah.
like a little bit.
yeah, and the thing that's like very important to point out is that like here's a company with $11 million in funding, right? And it's like, oh, why can't you figure it out? Like, why can't you just grow? And it's like, well, that's the thing though. Like, it's not that straightforward to grow a company, right? Like, you think like, oh, well, you have the money for it, right? Like, would you just grow it now, just grow it. And it's like, it's just like it. Whether it's leadership, whether it's goals, whether it's metrics, whether it's like how you run the operations, whether it's the value proposition that you give to your customers, where you fit in the marketplace. Like the main gist of this episode is like, just because you have the money does not mean you'll be successful.
Yeah.
And there are smaller CRMs out there that haven't raised 11 million, probably raised 2 million, 5 million, that are still running. Granted, maybe not at the level of an $11 million backed company, but nonetheless, like, just because you raise money does not mean you're going to be successful. And although yes, you're going to, you know, a company that raises 2 million versus 11 million, there's a difference there. Your run rate is different, where you can kind of deploy the money is different. But nonetheless, like for you detailers, like if you're like, oh, I don't have the money to go buy this, it's okay. If you don't have the money, it doesn't mean you're not going to make it. It just means you're going to have to come at it at a different approach. So now, moving forward, let's talk about another one. Do you remember how Twitch started? I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah. Do you remember Justin TV?
Yeah, I remember Justin.tv, right?
Yeah, Justin.tv, where they would stream like games and
Yeah, like a kind of like a bootleg stuff. Like you want to
Yeah,
watch
like
the
you would
college
like-
sports you don't have access to.
yeah.
Here you go. You want to watch this like I think Front Row Sports does that now. That's what I would use.
Yeah,
back
so basically, and that was like that's when I was in middle school, I think, or high school. So it was like maybe like 2010 or earlier.
It's just forever, like early internet.
Yeah, it's very early on when Justin.tv was a thing, and this was Justin he actually had a tech startup. It didn't do so well. I think he closed it down. He went to investors, raised a bit of money, and then he was like, "I'm going to stream my life 24/7." He was like the first streamer of anything, right? Do you know his story?
No.
Yeah, so Justin.tv, for anyone that's old enough to remember those days, the early internet days, yeah. So he started streaming his entire life, 24/7. There was always a camera on him, right? Like that was like, yeah, that's what he did. And after so many, however long, like I'm gonna skip forward all the way. Eventually, him and his team were like, okay, like here we have this streaming platform, we have this tech. What do we focus on, right? And it's like, you could go any direction. Like, hey, we should focus on this, focus on that. Is the cable good? Yeah. And the thing that they chose was, let's focus on streaming for gamers, and that's how, so many whatever. That's how Twitch came to be. And then you fast forward so many other years, and they sold Twitch for, I think, just shy over or under $1 billion.
Jeez.
Right? Now here's this guy that, like, early in the days, like he was like one of the first ones to ever do it, like stream live. He's been in the tech startup. He's raised millions of dollars. He has connection to investors and mentors and all that. Smart guy, right? So he sells the company. He chills for a little bit, and he starts his next company. It was called Atrium, something like that. Have you heard of that?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so on that one, the company raised around 70. Okay, so total disclosed funding is $76 million. All right, that's how much they raised from investors. But I think very shortly after starting, they closed down, and they returned around $75 million back to the investors. Now with him, again, he had a little over 100 employees, right? So here's a guy that sold a tech company for $1 billion, right? He's been in the startup world for quite a while. Like, he's probably mentored and invested in many other tech companies. He starts his own tech company, right? It's like they're supposed to be like a more efficient, faster service law firm kind of thing than your traditional law. Like, it's supposed to be like a tech, like startups, they always put a twist to something. So it's supposed to be like faster, more easily accessible law advice or whatever. Like, you just sign up there, hey, I need like a business lawyer and transactional, whatever, right? But this guy, again, he sold the company for $1 billion, right? He hired 100 plus people, and very shortly after that, he shuts it down. He's like, hey, I don't know what we're really doing. I don't know if this service is as good as just going to a regular lawyer. We have too many messages going on, and again, like, here you have a big old behemoth of a company that has $75 in funding, and they can't figure out. Well, we don't really know what we're doing here. You know, like they can't figure like who's our customer. You know, like who are we servicing? Are we servicing the lawyers, or are we servicing the consumers to pair them? And they couldn't figure that out. So they're like, we'll close it down, right? And on your side, have you seen like with your agency? Have you seen a company? You actually have
Shut down, yes.
the barbecue.
Yeah, I've seen people shut down.
Okay, but actually, we can even talk about that one, the barbecue one. Okay, so here we're talking about tech startups, right? We're talking about people raising 75 million, 11 million, 50 million, right? And you might be saying, well, this doesn't apply to me, Oscar. Okay, so let's talk about a barbecue restaurant then. Okay,
Local,
let's talk about your
hyper local,
your ordinary
neighborhood.
neighborhood barbecue spot, right? Kind of run us down that little situation, or why did a local barbecue restaurant close their doors?
So from first off, okay, here's the information I gathered. So it is, I get a call. Hey, we'd like to run ads. We need help getting more catering because that's where we make good money and more people in the door. Okay, cool. And so they have like very small budget, but it's normal for a local service or a local restaurant. And I go to their menu, and I think you pointed this out too. It's like we go to their menu and we're like, man, why don't barbecue? Texas love barbecue. Why aren't people going to barbecue? If you just put a sign that says barbecue, people are gonna go. Their product of their barbecue was like, it's not really barbecue. Do you remember? It was like
it was like some what is it, like pan dulce barbecue stuff.
It was like kind of like a Mexican fusion barbecue.
Right, yeah.
And yeah, at one point he tells me, and this is like a short period. This is like a month and a half, 2 month period. He's like, hey, yeah, I don't think we're gonna make it. Like if we don't get like hundreds of orders and hundreds of people coming to our door, like we're not gonna be able to. And I think for them, like it was paying rent and product, right, and people too. So I mean, it's not like cheap or anything, but I'm sure it wasn't hundreds of thousands of dollars they needed to make a month. I'm pretty sure if they could make like $20K or something, they'd survive.
And none of that, but even some of the, what do they call the barbecue chef people, the pit, whatever. But like some of them even won awards and stuff,
Pit
right? Like
master.
they had one, like they were like they had some notoriety behind their name a little bit, right?
Yeah, they had like the cook themselves were like awarded,
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah,
to people.
obviously we're not into barbecue like that, but but to that same thing though, of like, okay, not tech startup, not like trying to change the world, just a barbecue restaurant. They don't got customers. They're not making money. They're struggling. They can't pay their bills. And why is it? It's just like most people. How does your barbecue restaurant not? If it's like, dude, like customers, cost, leadership, the strategy.
Yeah,
like it's the same thing across the board. Granted, we don't know the tech startup phase to that level, but
yeah. And I mean, I provide more feedback on that. Like it was like, okay, while he was doing this, I hope he never watches this episode. If you do, love you. If he was doing the restaurant stuff, right? At the same time, in conjunction with, which I actually used that example you told me, I'll share that in a little bit. He also ran a landscaping business. Say he owned both companies, but he cut grass on the weekends to help pay for the restaurant. And so he still does the landscaping. He still has contracts there, but it's like, no, an example I use now when I'm pitching people is that, remember we went to go look at gym equipment? Dude, you go in and it's like I've used the fake examples, but this was a real example.
Yeah,
you say, what's the best? Let's set up a gym shop. Okay, cool. What's a good idea? Like, how can we make this place better? Let's open up a gun section.
Yeah.
Okay, well that makes sense, right? Because they overlap.
Yeah,
no, they don't.
Yeah.
What else can we do? Let's start an MMA gym in here too.
Yeah.
And so like that, like being split. In one business is 3 and it's like in the same location, and then you're pitching the same customer these 3 things. It's like that's just too convoluted. You can do it, sure, but like it'd be better to be one thing
versus,
especially if it's like there's like a group of people for this, a group of people for that. But when it's one guy jumping between in and out, like you have to be a crazy like. Yeah. It's hard enough doing one thing right.
Yeah.
To do 3 things right or 2 things right in this situation.
And again, like you can even go further to of like, so what we're getting at here is like being crystal clear on what you're doing and not trying to do multiple businesses at the same time. Like it doesn't work out, right? Like, oh well, Like even for a lot of detailers, like, oh, I want to add, like, some make sense of like, we're doing detailing, let's add PPF, paint protection film, or tint. That is somewhat like, it makes sense. But then some detailers talk to me and they're like, hey, we're thinking about adding like carpet cleaning, like residential carpet cleaning, and it's like, that's not the same thing anymore.
Yeah.
That is now a different business, So even with that, like, look at someone like Elon Musk, where has like 4 ginormous tech companies, right? And it's like, even with him to the guy that has a barbecue shop and also runs a landscape, like, instead of spending however many hours on that weekend trying to make money, like, if you would prioritize those resources to the main things that you need to do to get business, that would have a bigger impact than you trying to make a little bit of money here to put even a little bit more, in the actual restaurant. So things like that is like, like, that's just another reason. Like, like, it's just businesses. Like, again, like, at that one, it's like, leadership is the people, how you work, the plan. Like, there's a lot of things that go into a business that you would think, well, if you just, got customers, like 100%, it looks like it's easy to play Monday morning quarterback, but it's like, every business is going to be slightly different in terms of like what their pain points are or what they can't figure out or whatever.
Yeah, even if you are a focused business and you have only so many services, like, you can still get stuck in that same thing. Example for me is like, we used to offer logo design. It's like, every time we get a logo design and like, there's like a rock we keep tripping over because like, we don't really want to offer that, but people keep asking.
Yeah.
So at some point we say, we'll do it if we have to, but we don't offer it as a like standalone thing.
Yeah.
So like that, and that helps, right? So like, throw that in the batch of things that can slow you down or throw you off.
Okay, so that was that company. Let me go to a few other ones just to kind of drive the point home. So another one here. So I don't know if you remember this one. Actually, I'll skip that one because I didn't read up on that one. Okay, so another one here. Now this one, I'm sure if you've seen Hulu, they have it. But Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes, where she raised. Now this one's even crazier. But she raised.
The blood one?
Yeah. I think she raised. She raised, I think, over $600 million in funding. Like, she basically pulled the rug on everyone. Like, on
that's
like
just fraud.
Politicians. Yeah, for sure. But there is, if you see the documentary, of like there is
a documentary.
Oh yeah, it's yeah. Well, yeah.
I haven't seen it. I gotta watch it.
There is. It's on There's an HBO one and a Hulu one actually.
Okay.
I think.
Fire Festival.
But what I'm saying is, and we could talk about that one too. If you go to Hulu and Netflix, the Fire Festival of like. The money's there. The audience is already there, actually, because you have. Well, now we're jumping up. Do you remember that? Talk about it. Firefest. Firefest. Yes, of like that one was supposed to be a festival for a tech startup that Ja Rule co-founded with this other guy, and they were supposed to throw this festival to kind of kickstart some like their just get a bigger audience. And they had the money for sure. They had the celebrities because it was Ja Rule. He already has an audience. And like they could do their marketing to build up their their audience to buy tickets. And that one in itself was also a total disaster. It completely flopped. I think the company shut. What was the app behind it? I forget what app was behind it. Like the one that was kind of the reason why they did it. I think it was just called Fire.
Yeah, I think it was just called Fire.
Yeah, I think it was just called Fire. And
FYRE.
Yeah. And it totally flopped. It was terrible. I mean, like it looked like a FEMA camp that they had going on over there. And again, on this one, they had the money, they had the audience, but now it was the leadership and like the strategy and like it wasn't planned out logistically. It wasn't planned out correctly. And you're thinking like, well, how do you mess that up? It's like, man, just there's so many things of like that just add to like why it failed.
Yeah, and that I don't remember entirely, but like the leadership were like convinced that they could pull it out, which is like what you want, right? Like you want to be so
like you want to be
and convinced that I will make it work. And they had booked a bunch of artist bands to show up and play at this festival, and really there was only like 1 or 2 confirmed, and everybody else they were just like they'll come in. That's I believe they're gonna make it. Like I know we can convince them. And yeah, total flop. It was really bad.
And again, I feel like when I read about those stories and learn more about them, it's like it kind of puts things into perspective of like it. Not that it doesn't make you feel as bad, but like it's just like, oh, okay, so even this big company that has like so much bigger, so much more resources, and like they couldn't even figure it out. And it's like, okay, so like I don't know if it puts it in it's a different perspective, but at least it just kind of broadens your horizon of like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one struggling out there. Even if I don't have all the money, but there's other companies out there that are struggling that have all the resources, and even they can't even figure it out.
And then it's also like, what is success to you? Like what degree? Like of 100,000 a year versus 100,000 versus a million. Like it depends. Like just because like it doesn't have to be a $10 million fundraise.
Yeah,
for it to be successful.
Yeah, and that's a big part too, actually, because like it's easy to see yourself smaller than everyone else, right? But like if you say, yeah, I want to make whatever 90,000 a year and only work 4 days out of the week, the next 3 days like not do any work, like that's
exactly.
success in itself, right? So it's like it's easy to it's really important to be like, well, what's my metrics of success, or
which is hard to find in itself too, because like if you ask people that, like, I don't think people know. I don't know, not really. I kind of get it.
Yeah,
it's like an ebb and flow thing. Like sometimes I want to go really, really hard.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Stop calling me.
Yeah. So that's definitely a big part of everything of like, and once you kind of realize what it is you want out of your business and like how you're going to create it, it really does help kind of guide what your decisions are, right? Because if you're just loosely going to like, oh, I need to grow more, it's like, yeah, but why?
Yeah. Like if your only goal is to make more revenue or more money, you'll just take everything on.
Yeah.
And that is
yeah.
like when you get most stressed, because like you're doing nothing is streamlined.
Yeah.
You're just as much as possible, and you end up working way too much, like as inefficient.
Yeah.
And
that's another thing of like when detailers want to, and this is literally anyone as that barbecue guy, but that's another thing of like you want to make more money, so you're like, okay, I'll offer this and this and this. Oh, they want this too. Yeah, I'll just take everything on. And it's like being busier and taking on more services and offering more services does not correlate to like, oh, now you're gonna make more money, because you can if you can make, I don't know, 100,000 a year, right, by offering 3 services,
and
keep it way more simple, way less stressful, and say, hey, these are the 3 services that we offer. This is all we do. We're gonna find all the clients that we can or customers that we can to offer these 3 services. It's not about saying, hey, we offer 15 services, so now we have the biggest net of customers that we can pull in. It's more so of like, hey, what's exactly that you offer? How do you find the exact customers that meet that criteria? And it makes things so much easier.
It's like the best thing you could do is like know what you're good at. Make sure people want it. Like people need to want that service or product, and then just do it a lot.
Yeah, and that's it. And because I think it's also a fail safe to say, it's also kind of being lazy of like, if I would rather offer more services, that way I can get a little bit of everything, versus being more articulate or efficient and more effective of saying, I can get rid of mostly everything and just keep these 3. And my job now is just to find the pool of these customers. And it's like, it seems easier to offer more to cast a bigger net.
Yeah, it's broad.
But it's just way more broad. Your messaging is a lot more difficult to tone down, like to narrow down, because you're offering so many services. Like if we're a detailing company, which we are, and then we offer residential carpet cleaning, we offer I don't know, some kind of tire rotation or tire, like changing tires, right, to detailing. Yeah, it's like, what are we doing here? Like what is it that we exactly do? Versus if we say, hey, we offer paint correction, coatings, and interior cleaning, and that is literally the only 2 services that we offer. It's like you're way more effective in your messaging. So yeah, I would say, yeah, like that's actually a good point that I made, is that, yeah, like the fewer service that you offer, the more clear that you'll get, and the more service you offer is kind of a false thinking of like, well, the more I offer, the more customers I get, and it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, you gotta have your core.
Okay, so now
services.
So now let's go over just a few movies now. Again, you can see this all throughout any industry, where just because there's more money does not mean they're more successful. So, did you ever watch the movie R.I.P.D.?
No.
With Ryan Reynolds? Mm-mm. Me neither. To the point. So their budget, and this isn't, I don't think these are like exact numbers, but we'll just go with them. So their budget was $130 million, and they grossed worldwide $79 million.
Pain.
Yeah, no bueno. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Their budget was $137 million, and they grossed worldwide $85 million.
Pain.
Yeah, no bueno. I don't even remember. Oh, the 13th Warrior, starring Antonio Banderas. I could already tell you, you got him and you. It ain't gonna do well. But the budget was 125 million. Worldwide gross was 61 million.
Damn.
And again, like if money was just the answer to everything, all these box office movies, these big tech companies, they wouldn't go under. They would still be thriving. They'd be setting record numbers and record revenue points and whatever. But it's not just the resources. It's not just the money. Again, could we tell you exactly what that is? No, because there's so many things that go into it.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Let me see if I can find one more movie that we both know. I don't know any of these movies. I mean, The Promise with Oscar Isaac. He's a good actor. But that movie, the budget was 90 million and they grossed worldwide 10.5 million.
Pain.
That's bad. Yeah. So it's not just the money. It's a lot more than just that. Mars Needs Moms, budget 150 million, gross worldwide is 39 million. Yeah, no bueno. So even going back to the last thing, a few minutes on this and then we'll wrap up of like, so if like when a business is at that point of like they're failing, that's the barbecue people, you are in desperation mode at that point. You are in like, I need the last bit of oxygen that I can get. Yeah, and it's like at that point where they're like, someone tells you, hey, like, you know, we don't think we're gonna make it. There's only so much that you can do. Like you are on the last straw of like, okay.
Oh yeah.
You have to you have to redo everything, restructure your operations, your finances.
Yeah.
Like
at that point, it's like take the L.
Yeah,
like,
100%.
You might just be better off restarting.
Yeah,
trying a different version of it.
Yeah, it's like at that point, it's like just call it in, man. They call it in because like
actually. There was another restaurant. It was a wings restaurant that they're like, hey Caesar, if we don't see insurmountable increase in our results, we're gonna have to let you go. And I was like, insurmountable with what we have, like we just like we can't do it. Like it is not possible. And so we're like, look, we can't. Like we stepped back. We said,
and again, the same thing of like,
expectation was like way off. Like,
and it's like, when you're at that point, again, we don't know why they went out of it. Or not if they went out of business, but their business surely wasn't performing as what they thought it would. But it's like, it's not just money.
No.
It is not just money. And it's not just like, and again, you can't wait to the last, when you're like, hey, our business might fail. Let's go hire a marketing guy because he's going to help us, right? He's going to bring in all the customers now.
Like 4 months in.
Yeah, it's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. So, Caesar, thank you for coming on to this episode.
Absolutely.
We'll wrap it up right here. And we'll talk to you on the next one. Bye-bye.